group. We've been doing this since 2013. So we have this whole list of people that I send out assignments to from time to time. Over the summer, we've been doing a lot of testimony provided by email to interim committees. I don't know if you know this, but after the legislature meets, all the committees that were standing during session are still committees until the next session, and they do these interim assignments. Mostly they are making sure that whatever legislation passed last time gets implemented properly, gets funded properly, but they take testimony. And now because of COVID, they are not having people actually come to Austin and testify at committee hearings. They're letting us submit testimony via email, which opens huge opportunities for us. Because there's not that many people can make a trip to Austin on a weekday, but you can sure write an email and push send. So that's been working well for us. During session, we are famous for our trips to Austin and me and my little red car. So we would love you to join us for that. The assignments might be anything from make a phone call or send an email to please come to Austin so we can get a bunch of people in this committee hearing and try to sway some legislation. We work on national legislation and local issues as well. We've been known to turn out folks to a school district when somebody's trying to pass a new bond or a tax rate election or something like that. Right now in Southlake, they've got issues with their diversity committee that is trying to push through a real liberal agenda, and we've been activating people on that. So if you get all the normal emails from Julie, like about the meetings and about the football games and the activities and stuff, the stuff that I send out is not on there. You have to sign up to get on my list because I don't want to bother people that aren't going to do something. So you don't have to do it every time. There's no obligation. Sometimes you'll be able to do it, sometimes you won't. But if you put your name on my list, I'm going to pass this around. All it means is you will get emails, and then you choose whether or not to take the action. Now, some of you here are already on my list, and you're already getting my messages. I just sent one out last week. So if you're already on the list, don't add yourself again. But if not, and if you'd be willing to help us, this is one of the best things we do, and we are famous for it throughout the state. Terry will tell you that, and Rachel. So please help out if you can, and we'll just send this around. Jim, I'm start with you. John can follow you. That's it.
Okay, Sheridan and Joe, are you ready now? Okay, can somebody help Sheridan? Okay, right there. We're going to pass the hat just to help fund the venue and the food, stuff like that. So anybody that could throw some money in the hat, we would definitely appreciate that. I also want to let you know that tomorrow, Fran and I are doing our first super professional money pitch to some of those rich West Texan oil men. So you can pray for us. We're flying out to Midland and flying right back to make it in time for the Denton meeting tomorrow night. But would definitely really appreciate your prayers. We're really hoping to get an employee to help us because honestly, Fran and I can't keep going at the pace we're going. So definitely, please be praying for us for tomorrow for favor that they would see what we do and find it valuable. Okay. Where's Susan? Are you doing introductions tonight? Come on up. Oh, I'm sorry. Candidates. Yes, of course. Are there candidates here that want to introduce themselves? There may not be. Nobody really has been showing up as a candidate, which is odd. No candidates? Yeah, we'll assume they're block walking. Sure.
It's a gorgeous night for block walking.
I'm not running for anything. I know how y'all are voting. If you'd like to be a poll watcher and get paid, we still need poll workers for November 3rd. So we need more in Hurst and probably some other places. So if you want to work the polls that day, see me. I'm in one of these shirts.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're so pleased to have our good friend Terry Hall back with us to speak to us about transportation and toll roads, one of my favorite things. Terry is founder and director of the Texans Uniting for Reform and Freedom. That's TURF. TURF is a grassroots group of Texans asking for reforms through accountability and good public policy, as well as promoting non-toll, sensible transportation solutions. TURF remains committed to ending eminent domain abuse and works tirelessly to secure a pro-freedom, pro-taxpayer, fiscally solvent, freely accessible public road policy for all Texans. Welcome back, Terry. It's good to have you.
Good evening, y'all. I just love being out among friends, and especially in a maskless place. It's like a breath of fresh air for all of us, I know. And happy Columbus Day, not Indigenous Peoples Day. And I am an Indigenous people, but I still celebrate Columbus and teach my children about the founding of our continent. So anyway, I wanted to start this evening because I know that you are a group of action. And Julie always wants me to bring action items to you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first I want to give you kind of where we're headed for the session. We have 3 top priorities. And fortunately, it's the same top 3 as last session. Because like pretty much every other grassroots group and priority, whether it was the GOP priorities or any other Lone Star Project, all of those things, none of those things got passed. They did not get addressed. And so we're hoping that there's a sea change this time around to get a lot of our initiatives through. But I want to remind you of Abbott's pledge. Now, if you're like me, a lot of us are very upset with the governor at this moment in time. But up until now, he's actually been very strong on his pledge against no new tolls. Here's what he told us when he campaigned and reiterated it in his State of the State addresses and in several of his initiatives like the Keep Texas Moving and such. He said, we're going to fix Texas roads without raising fees, taxes, tolls, or debt. Okay, so I was like, woo, amen to that, right? Well, we've had to really press him to keep that enforced. So our top 3 priorities address the toll road issue. The first is take the toll off the road when it's paid for. Right? Do I hear an amen or 2 there? The second is toll collection reform or toll billing reform. How many of you have had some problems with toll bills? Big ones, right? Lots of big fines and fees tacked onto your bill. So we're going to talk about that. And then our third is really holding the line on new toll projects. The number one way they try to come at us with that is to reauthorize the very unpopular, very crony capitalist type of contracts known as public-private partnerships. Remember those? You guys should know this a little bit because I've talked with you before. And so that's our third priority, is to make sure none of those bills pass. In fact, guess what? There were 10 of those bills last session. We had to kill all of them. 7 got out of committee. Several got to the floor for a full floor vote. There were 14 bills to raise taxes and fees on your vehicles in some way, shape, or form. There were 7 bills to create new toll entities and agencies unaccountable to the people all over the state of Texas. So there were literally dozens of bad bills I had to kill. And a lot of it was due to the work of folks like Fran in your group here, and we're so grateful. So I wanted to start with, let's take the toll off the road when it's paid for. But how bad is it, right? There was a Star-Telegram article, April of last year. Some of you may have remembered it because it was eye-popping, where it revealed the cost to go 5 miles in peak hours on the North Tarrant Express, which is largely Interstate 820, operated by a private foreign corporation, Sintra, shot up to $15 to go 5 miles. Do the math, that's $3 a mile, okay? No one ever thought it would get like that. And that was only 2 or 3 years into the operation of that privately owned toll road. They have the rights to that for 52 years. Where do you think the toll rate's gonna go from here? Only up. If you calculate that out and you had to pay that on a daily basis for the full length of that project, it'd be over $18,000 a year to get to work. Think about that. That's greater than most people's property tax bills. Then, a Dallas Morning News article last November asked, when will the toll roads in North Texas be paid off? And I'm like, okay, you have my full attention. I've been after this issue for 15 years. The answer is never. Okay, that's the real answer. But what was great about that article is it gave us proof that what we've been saying for years, over a decade in the legislature, is true. And that is this. A trip from downtown Plano to Dallas to avoid US 75 costs $6 one way on the Dallas North Tollway. That's now the cheap toll road, by the way, compared to the North Tarrant Express. That road opened in 1987, and yet 33 years later, tolls are still being collected on that highway. The article goes on to say that according to the North Texas Transportation, it's actually not that, it's the NTTA, which is the North Texas Tollway Authority. It's no longer a statewide policy to deem roads toll-free after they've been paid off. We got it in print. The NTTA owes roughly $9.3 billion in bonds across the entire system of its toll roads. They no longer calculate their tolls or their debt or paying off the debt based on a single road. They've tied the entire thing together financially into a system so that no road could get the tolls off of it until the entire system bond debt is retired. So they've turned it into Robin Hood for roads. They're stealing from like Dallas North Tollway, which actually cash flows, and using the excess revenue from it to cover the sea of red ink on the rest of their system that doesn't pay for itself because they have express lanes in the middle that people only use a few hours in the morning and a few hours at night. So it doesn't cash flow. It doesn't even pay for the $1.2 billion, which is really double that when you count the debt, and it doesn't pay it off. So they're moving money around. They're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. They tie it together as a system so they can say no road's ever paid for, and they continue to extend out the system, right? They extend out the system more and more, and it said in that article, they have no plans to ever remove the tolls. The system won't even be paid off until 2052. If anything, tolls will keep going up rather than going away. According to the NTTA's website, toll rates will increase every year at 2.75% compounded. And again, that's the cheap toll road. That's not the privately operated ones. Then just a few weeks ago, how many of you subscribed to the Texan? Come on, we should see more hands than that in this crowd. All right, so the Texan, Connie Burton's news outlet, online news outlet. Just September 28th, they had an article that disclosed that Harris County has hatched a plan to circumvent state law by creating something new called a local governance corporation. They plan to sell the Harris County toll system to this government corporation. See if you can follow this. They're going to pay off the original bonds when they do that, reissue new bonds under this new government corporation without the prior restrictions on the surplus funds under state law. In other words, they found a way to circumvent the law that says you have to use the toll revenues on that toll system or on that toll project. They can't send the money on somewhere else. So now the funds, under this new little scheme they've hatched, can be used on anything the Commissioner's Court votes to approve. The county will get $300 million initially, then $90 million a year after that. Now, how many of you know that our Texas Constitution actually protects us from perpetuities? Did you know that? Article 1, Section 26 of the Texas Constitution prohibits perpetuities like this. And yet we see nothing but lawlessness everywhere we look when it comes to these toll authorities that don't answer to us. So secondly is our toll collection reform. TxDOT alone, now just think about this. TxDOT only operates 3 small projects in the Austin area. TxDOT alone has put over 2 million Texans into collections over unpaid toll bills. 2 million. What's the size of the city of population of Austin, city of Austin itself, where all their toll roads are that TxDOT operates? Barely over 1 million. It was actually 900,000 back at the last census, but now it's probably closer to 1.2 million, something like that. So that means that they've entrapped more people than the entire city of Austin in unpaid toll bill problems. What is the number one way somebody gets caught up with an unpaid toll bill problem where they end up with fines and fees galore? And basically, in the eyes of Texas law, you are a criminal over an unpaid toll bill, which ought to frighten every one of you. They're making criminals out of everyday use of our public road system. The number one way they get upside down is by having their payment card expire. So they don't immediately notify the toll entity, whoever that may be. Then they start getting bills issued to them with fines and fees tacked on, and to become a habitual toll violator, all it takes is 100 unpaid tolls. That may sound like a lot, but guess how quick that happens? Every time you pass under one of those toll gantries, those cameras, it's usually every 2 or 3 miles. You might pass under 4 or 5 on the way to work, 4 or 5 on the way home from work. It's less than 30 days, and you have 100 toll transactions that are unpaid because your payment card has a problem. There is nothing in statute that requires these entities to notify you immediately if there's a problem with your payment card. If you have a problem with your payment card with Amazon Prime or with Netflix or something, although none of us have Netflix anymore, right? If you have a problem with that, they immediately notify you that your payment card didn't work. They're very motivated to get the payment from you. Not so with a government agency. They have no incentive to tell you there's a problem with your payment card because cha-ching, they can now tack on literally thousands of dollars in fines and fees, where a $20 toll bill can explode into a $2,000 bill in no time flat. And they have criminal penalties that go into that as well. They can actually block your vehicle registration and impound your car on the spot. Now, most people owe money on their cars, right? So now you have a car payment you can't pay. You can't get to work to pay the car payment. You can't pay your toll bill because you can't get to work. And you have to pay an extra $1,200 on top of the $2,000 in fines and fees you owe in order to get your car from being out of being impounded. What's your chance of getting a new car when you have a lien on your old car? Do you see what we're creating here? A cycle of unpayable debt. It's a huge problem, and we have got to get the reforms that we got in 2017 to apply to NTTA and all the other 13 toll entities around the state, not just to TxDOT. So I wanted to give a shout out to Tony Tenderholt because he's here tonight. But he and Briscoe Kane and so many of our Freedom Caucus members in 2017 made quick work of that TxDOT sunset bill, turned 6 of our 7 bills into amendments. We got them successfully attached to that bill, and one of them was our toll collection reform bill. So thank you, Tony. However, that, again, was a TxDOT bill, so it only applied to that agency. It does not apply to NTTA. So that's the downfall of that, and we need to get that going. And of course, that bill didn't even get a hearing in either the Senate or the House last session. And that toll collection amendment in 2017, just the session prior, passed by a vote of 136-3 in the House. There is great support for this if we can get it to the floor for a vote. They know they dare not vote against something like this, right? Because it doesn't play well back home. So it's a matter of getting it to the floor. Then I wanted to tell you about our third thing, which last session they came at us with a big public-private partnership bill, had a lot of support from very unexpected people. It was House Bill 1951. Some of you might have remembered hearing about that because somehow Matt Krause got talked into carrying that bill to do unlimited reauthorization of public-private partnership toll projects. No sunset date, unlimited, forever. And it took a lot of our toll reforms and watered them down. A lot of our bills were done with Senator Bob Hall, and we had some of our House sponsors that did some of those, like Matt Shaheen and others, and took those reform bills and watered them down, threw them all into one big kind of omnibus bill. And when some of y'all in this room went to work with us to approach him to try and get him to back down from this, in fact, we had several good guys, Jerry Patterson, Scott Sanford, Steve Toth. They co-authored that bill with Matt Krause. I don't think half of them even know what was in it, but when they did that. Some of them eventually took their name off, some didn't. But at the end of the day, it was a really bad bill. When it finally came to the floor for a vote, he had to pull it down and withdraw it because there was not enough support to pass that bill. And a lot of that's because of people in this room. And I know that's hard because sometimes he's great on other issues and maybe a friend. But even when our friends do something wrong, we need to call them on it when that happens. And we fully expect that there's going to be another push next session for a bill similar to that. One time, again, like you guys know this from school bonds and so many other things. They only have to win once and they get what they want. We have to win every single time in order to keep this stuff at bay. So public-private partnerships, they've been outlawed in large part because of the grassroots coalition that we've helped build over the last 15 or so years. This will be my 9th legislative session that I've been doing this. But the Texans' Kim Roberts just published an article confirming that the road lobby is clamoring for more toll roads, specifically the public-private partnership, privately operated toll roads. We call them P3s for short, but it's really an illusion. They're going to say it's because we're in an economic downturn because of COVID. And because we're in this huge budget shortfall, we need to put all the tools back in the toolbox, and we're never going to have enough road to fix all of our, or never enough money to fix all of our road projects unless you give us the toll tool back and get some of this private money in here so that we can finish building these road projects that we don't have money for. It all sounds great. However, they do it every session whether we have a surplus or a deficit, so it doesn't really matter. It's all because special interests want it. Why do they want it? Because very little of their own money actually gets put into the deals or put at risk. They find every way under the sun to put you and I, the taxpayer, on the hook for every conceivable loss on these projects. We backstop their loans. Texas taxpayers, in fact, put $1 billion of gas tax money into the first public-private partnerships here in the DFW area on the LBJ and the North Tarrant Express. We also compensate them for adverse events. Don't you love that? Any adverse event. That includes uncollectible tolls from out-of-state drivers or international drivers from Mexico. We pay for anything like hurricane evacuations. Anytime when they have a toll go free to get people through an area, all of that, we make the private partner whole. So these contracts have also been used to lower the speed limits on our free routes and increase the speed limit on the private express lanes up to 85 miles per hour in some cases. It also has provisions in these contracts to prevent the expansion of your free roads surrounding the private toll lanes up to a 5-mile radius in urban areas, which can be huge. There's usually 4 or 5 freeways in that amount of space. And you might remember Representative Stickland, his struggle last session to get fire and EMS to be able to use those lanes for free in an emergency. And he could not get that bill through because the contract wouldn't allow it without compensation. We would have had to pay the private operator for the use of every time an emergency vehicle used our public roadways. So we're subjugating public safety and the public interest to a private contract negotiated and signed in secret. So these are the projects that cost upwards of $30 to $40 a day and up to $18,000 a year. And that's just today's prices.
Where is all this money going?
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, most of it, if it's the privately operated toll roads, it's getting sucked out of Texas and going to Spain. It doesn't even stay here. Doesn't benefit us at all. So tolls are also being used as a means of control, and I wanted to bring this up since we have the Green New Deal on everyone's mind these days, since Joe Biden can't seem to remember if he's for it or against it or if it's on his website or not. So we believe that the reauthorization of public-private partnerships is a slippery slope, because here's what we're already seeing, the next generation of consequences. It won't take long for our local governments to adopt what they're doing in other states, right? Like Fairfax County, Virginia. They're now issuing $94 tickets if you take a back road to avoid paying the toll on their express lane on I-66 in Virginia. So the $94 ticket's actually more than their toll road, which is $44 one way. $44 one way. In an article on the newspaper.com, they said that anyone without a primary use area permit only issued to owners of homes in that neighborhood are allowed to drive in that neighborhood. That means your bridge club, your Bible study, your True Texas Project meeting or Christmas party, none of that can happen if you are not an owner of that and given a government-issued permit. We're also seeing all kinds of anti-car policies that are coming out of this, that are trying to force you out of your car and into mass transit. For instance, most of our Texas urban areas have already adopted basically the equivalent of the Paris Climate Accord in their transportation policies. It involves AOC's Green New Deal. Over 400 mayors did so after the president opted us out of the Paris Climate Treaty. So they're doing it anyway at the local level. This is rationing your free routes, trying to put in tolls and restricted lanes everywhere to force you onto a bus, a bike, or have to walk to get anywhere. I basically call it the misery index. They want to inflict misery on driving solo in your car and use social engineering and behavior modification to pass their green agenda and force it down our throats. There's actually a community now in Tempe, Arizona, one of the first anywhere in this country, the first ever car-free community. They do not allow residents to have personal cars driven or parked anywhere in their development. So this is going to happen. They're going to create scarcity so that we don't have any way to get around. In fact, San Antonio's climate adaptation plan that they adopted is trying to outlaw personal private vehicle ownership. And the only way you'd be able to get around is mass transit operated by the government or having to hire a rideshare company. They don't even want you to own a car. So I'm wrapping up because I have a minute left here. Even though this all sounded so far-fetched just a few months ago, do any of us believe in today's mass compliance, mass government control over virtually every aspect of life, that this isn't so far-fetched anymore? It's just around the corner. So we have our work cut out for us for next session, and we're going to need your help to kill every single bill that's going to try and raise our taxes, put in new toll roads, grow government agencies by creating more toll agencies, or infringe on our personal liberties, including our freedom to travel. So you should have gotten a flyer. I think we had some of those passed around. I also have a clipboard. If you are not getting our email alerts, I don't sell my list or give it to anybody. It's just you and I talking. And I will keep you alert as to when certain bills come up and when we need those calls to go in to your representatives up here. And we really, really appreciate it. And we also want you to get on our text message alert, similar to what you have for True Texas Project. It's on your flyer. You just text No Toll Texas to 94253. And we would also love it if you'd be calling your legislators and asking them to author and joint author our two key bills, to take tolls off the road when it's paid for and to get our toll collection reforms passed. So I don't think I have time for questions, but I'm going to stick around later. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. I love when Terry comes because she speaks fast and she has energy, and I think that's fantastic. We are going to call an audible. We have someone that just arrived, and we really want to introduce you to her. It's Shelley Luther. Why don't you come on up? She said she didn't want to speak. She just wanted to be here to support us, but I think we'll be happy to support her.
I didn't want to take over the meeting. I came to support y'all. We came here late. We were picking up Tim's son, but I just wanted to say hi to everybody and thank you for being involved, and thank you for everyone that is supporting me. If you haven't heard, I got the most votes in my special election, so I was kind of excited about that. And our runoff early voting starts December 9th. And our election day is the week of Christmas. Imagine that, Governor Abbott. It's okay. We can still do this. But I just wanted to say that I agree with everything that was being said. The last 10 minutes, I will, if I get into the Senate, I will probably be the one that votes no on most of those, are like all the bills you were talking about, but probably most of the bills that go through, because they're usually against anything that we want as the people. The other thing that I want to tell you that I want to work on is Texas Right to Life is putting together the bill to abolish abortion, and I'm going to work closely with them so we can get that put through. Of course, we want to get Governor Abbott out of our lives and the rest of the government out of our lives, because we are adults and responsible, and we can take care of ourselves and our families. But the other thing is constitutional carry. That is going to get passed this time, because I will make sure, if I have to sleep on people's porches and act crazy or do whatever, because I will, I will. I guess that's how we get things done around here. But I will do it. We need to get our God-given unalienable rights back, and it starts with putting real people back in government, draining the swamp. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Are you going to stick around? Okay. She'll be sticking around so you can get a picture with her, put her on social media before you leave. Also, I did tell Joel he could make a quick announcement. So real quick, and then we'll get on with our night.
I'm Joel Downs. I'm a judge on election day, November 3rd. I just wanted to tell you, besides poll watchers, we need poll workers. The pay is $10 an hour, and it's only 14 hours a day. One day. My number, if you want to get your phones out, it's 817-217-9752. Give me a call. Thank you very much.
Working the poll is fun. Rachel Malone is our next speaker. Rachel is the Texas Director for Gun Owners of America. She's been here before. We love hearing from Rachel. She has received outstanding accolades for her efforts in training grassroots activists like us across the state on how to lobby our legislature. Her focus is on our God-given rights as outlined in the Second Amendment, and she will share her thoughts on what to expect in Texas regarding red flag laws and constitutional carry. Welcome, Rachel. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much. It's always a great day when I'm here with fellow liberty lovers of the True Texas Project, so thank y'all for hosting me. Last weekend, I was in another one of my favorite places, or close to another one of my favorite places. I was close to Gonzales, Texas. Who can tell me what happened in Gonzales, Texas?
Come and take it.
Come and take it. Who can tell me the date of the Battle of Gonzales? 1836? October 1835. Do you remember the exact date?
Today.
Not today. Not the 4th? Not the 5th? Well, he was the closest. All right, he's going to go ahead and win that t-shirt. Here you go. It's the wrong size. Go see the table for another one. It was October 2nd, 1835. So close. Very, very close. Definitely was October. That was that wonderful time that the Texans stood up for what they believed was right, wasn't it? So what they did, here's what happened. The Mexican government was so benevolent and said, here, take some cannon to protect yourself in case, there are bad guys you need to protect yourself from. So they kept the cannon. And then the Mexican government realized that there was some tumult happening, and if the government was going to be tyrannical, which they wanted to be, they couldn't be tyrannical if the people actually had means to defend themselves. So they said, here, let's fix it, let's get the cannon back. And so they said, send back your cannon. We want to have the ability to be tyrannical. I don't think they said those words, but that was basically implied. And so the Texans, being reasonable people, said, you know what? Does the Second Amendment protect cannon? I'm really not sure that falls under the text. Also, gosh, we have cannon? What are we doing with cannon? That could hurt the children, y'all. Don't you care about the children? And the government says it's going to protect us, that they're big and mighty and powerful. I think we should trust them. They know what they're doing. They'll keep us safe. Besides, it's all for the children. Got to keep them safe. So let's be reasonable. And they said, sure, come and take it. That's what happened, right? Battle of Gonzales? Yeah, no. Those Texans said, come and take it, which meant don't you dare come and take it. Over our dead bodies, literally. They stood up. We had what happened at the Alamo. Alamo, who can tell me who wrote these words in the back of my t-shirt? Victory or death? Who wrote those words at the Alamo?
Colonel Travis.
Colonel Travis, you get a t-shirt too. I don't have one with me because this is for somebody else, but you can get one at the back of the table. Pick your size. So, victory or death? That's when Colonel William Barrett Travis at the Alamo said, we are besieged. The enemy has demanded a surrender, but we will never surrender or retreat. Victory or death. He was determined to stand there, and they stood and they died, but they won their victory. And really, a lot of what that happened over, it was liberty in general, but what really sprang it forward was gun rights, was the right of the people to protect themselves. That didn't start with the Second Amendment. That's a God-given natural right, guaranteed by the Second Amendment, guaranteed by our Constitution, and infringed on currently, am I right? So I'm so proud of our Texan heritage. I'm so proud of the stand of the Alamo, but I'm not proud of what Texas has become, and I'm not proud of the way that our state in the past year, our state legislatures have been calling for gun control in ways I don't think they ever have before in Texas, at least not for many, many years. Not even previously when we were under Democrat control. They weren't even calling for this kind of gun control back then. This is unheard of. So just over a year ago, August 2019, we saw several horrible attacks in Odessa and El Paso. And these attackers, these deranged madmen, took so many innocent, precious lives because they did not value life. And y'all, you know how our legislature and how our Texas leadership responded? And yeah, I'm talking about the top three. I'm talking about Governor Abbott, Speaker of the House, Speaker Bonnet, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Do you know how they responded to this? They said, let's get a safety commission, let's establish some special committees, and let's make sure that we are protecting people's right to defend themselves so this won't happen again. Is that what they did? I wish. I wish that's how they responded, because that actually would have been the logical way to respond. If there are attackers, if there is evil in this world, which there is, which El Paso and Odessa showed us if we had any doubt, since there is evil in the world, since the government doesn't have the ability to be there and protect everybody from all harm, even if they wanted to, neither do they have the responsibility, neither do they trust them if they say they do, or they look like they might have the ability to or desire to. We shouldn't trust them on that. Given all those facts, the right thing to do to keep Texas communities safe is to increase our ability to defend themselves. Unfortunately, this whole entire past year, during the interim, when, by the way, you can't pass laws, and typically there are some hearings, but maybe there will be one hearing on gun rights. That's all I've ever experienced. Maybe one hearing, maybe one in the House, one in the Senate. If it's really, really bad, they might be really talking about a bunch of gun control. That would be the maximum. No, they scheduled like a dozen hearings this past year, interim hearings, all over Texas, all on gun control. How many of y'all are on Fran's list? I do want to see a show of hands. How many of y'all have been getting the emails about the Mass Violence Committee hearings and requests for input, including one that's on the table right now asking for your input by Friday? Yeah, that's been happening this whole past year, the whole entire past year since last August. And I'm really proud of the fact that our GOA Texas activists have shown up from Austin to Dallas to 2 hearings in Odessa, 2 hearings in El Paso at a very, very liberal venue. We dominated the scene. Gun rights activists showed up and we had at least a 2-to-1 ratio, if not a 3-to-1 ratio or more of our statements versus their statements when it came to simply the grassroots, the everyday people showing up, not the represented organizations. Because let me tell you, there were a lot of represented organizations who sent their lobbyists to fight for gun control. So let's talk real quick about the specific measures they're pushing. Because I guarantee you, no matter what happens in elections, you're going to see these policies get raised. Now, there are some very blatant gun control measures. I'm not going to even address right now the ones that are literally ban the guns because you guys already know that's bad. You already know that if they take over the House, they're going to be calling for that. But I want to talk about a few more subtle bills that on their face, you might not immediately think it's bad or you might not immediately know what it's doing. And I want to explain what is happening there and what we can do to fight against it. And then we'll talk about the great things that we really are going to try to do instead of those terrible solutions. So let's jump in first just with red flag laws. Who's heard of red flag laws? Basically everybody by now. Did you know that 2 years ago, when Governor Abbott first proposed red flag laws, yes, it was Governor Abbott who proposed red flag laws. Yep. Did you know that nobody really knew what they were? And the way that they were presented, a lot of gun owners were like, no, that's a good idea. Because the way they were presented was, oh, we need to keep the bad people from having guns. Let's make sure that the felons don't have guns. Y'all, there were way, way too many gun owners that were hoodwinked into saying, well, that might be a good idea. And then they looked a little deeper and realized what was actually happening. All right, anybody ever heard of due process? Not going to give you a lesson on the Constitution. I think you guys are enough well-versed. You kind of get the concept of due process. Let me tell you about red flag laws. So everybody's familiar with them. Who thinks you can tell me in one sentence exactly what a red flag law is? It's a little harder. Okay, here's how I define a red flag law. Okay, every state has a little different nuances. They're all a little different, the ones that have them, the 17 that have them. Here's a red flag law. It's a means for the government to take away your guns before you've committed a crime without even accusing you of committing a crime. Simply on the allegation that you might commit a crime in the future. It's literally a thought crime. So if you're going to get into the specifics of data, which to fight this we have to, you suddenly realize that predictors of violence, like the way that they try to predict them, they can't predict them. They try to predict them through saying, mental illness, that's not a good predictor of violence. Regardless of the data, that kind of measure that takes away your gun before you've committed the crime, that's guilty until proven innocent. And that is a direct violation of due process, is it not? So here, there are 2 poison pills in a red flag law. There's the one lowering the threshold of taking away your gun, right? So we're going to take away before you committed that crime. We just think you might be going to do it. We have some reasons to suspect maybe you got angry one day and then you went to the store to buy ammo. Goodness, you're definitely a dangerous person. By the way, I didn't make that up. That was what a state employee mentioned when they were, I think it was from the governor's staff, don't quote me on that, it was from somebody talking about this red flag law proposal, Might have somebody who, he makes an angry post on Facebook, and then we tag his credit card buying ammo at the gun store. That was what might be a predictor of somebody who might commit violence. Has it ever been you and me? You're sitting in traffic, we're like, gosh, how long are we gonna have to sit here? We say, I could plan for a better weekend, let's just go get some ammo, right? Nothing violent about that, nothing abnormal, that's completely honest, and that might get tagged. So the one poison pill is lowering the threshold for what your guns might be taken away. And it's based on somebody else's thought of that you might have done or thought something wrong. The second is taking away your procedural due process. So maybe take away your right to a lawyer, take away your right to appeal, take away your right to be there. It might be served with a no-knock warrant. So what Governor Abbott proposed is, let's make sure you have an attorney there, you know this is happening, you get to be there, but still, if we think you're going to commit a crime, your gun gets taken away. That is not due process. That will never be due process. So, everybody a little more clear on exactly what a red flag law is? Do you think you could explain it a little better? Everybody, if somebody asked you tomorrow what is a red flag law, y'all think you could explain it? Okay? Yeah, it's taking away your gun before you've committed a crime. But that's not it. Another measure they're looking at is expanded background checks. So how many of y'all know to purchase a gun, do you have to go through a background check? I want to see some hands, and I'm going to call on somebody. Raise your hand if you think you know the answer. Do you purchase a gun legally, do you have to go through a background check? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. Does anybody disagree? You disagree. What do you say? You don't have to. Both of y'all are right. So federal law says if you buy through somebody with a federal firearms license, you have to have a background check. Texas has an exception. In some states do, where if you show your license to carry, then you don't have to have that background check. Also, so if you go to the gun store, background check or show your license to carry, which means you've had a background check. If you and I just decide personally to buy a gun in the parking lot or exchange a gun, we don't have to get a background check. That's our private property. We have the right to exchange that property, right? I'll give you money, you give me a gun, or vice versa. We have that right. It's an innate property right. We have the right of our property disposition to get rid of property however we want to. So expanded background checks means our state would pass a law and say, you know what? Even for those private sales, you have to get a background check. You are not allowed to dispose of your property. And the only way to do that and go to expanded or universal background checks is going to be start tracking all the guns to figure out where they are. And have literally a gun registry. Senator Hall did a great job laying that out with a graphic, and I could point that out to you if you want. So that's something else that's on the table. But let me tell you something I think might be even more dangerous than those two laws. Now, don't get me wrong. Red flag laws, expanded background checks, those are bad. Mind control as a form of gun control is even more dangerous. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. Last year, there was a bill in the Homeland Security Committee, which I'm sure Representative Tenderhold remembers because he helped to kill it, or helped try to kill it there, and we managed to kill it a little bit later as well. It was called HB 316, and it sounded so good. It said, you know what? We're not going to ban any guns. We just want to help gun owners stay safe. So let's have a state-funded, taxpayer-funded, well, they didn't quite say this part, up front, but it was going to be a taxpayer-funded gun safety awareness program. Firearm safety, suicide prevention awareness program, right? Those are all good things. How many of y'all believe in firearm safety? Good. I'm glad. I do too. I believe in gun safety. Here's what I mean when I say gun safety. Keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target or until you're ready to shoot. I mean, keep that gun pointed in a safe direction, right? Be aware of your target, what's beyond it. Okay? That's the kind of gun safety that I'm talking about. Do you think that's the kind of gun safety that Moms Demand Action was talking about? Yeah, no, they had a little different idea. Their idea of gun safety is, oh goodness, if you have a gun, well, you're allowed to have a gun. I know you want to have fun with your gun and go to the range, so we're not going to stop your fun, but dude, can you just be responsible? You need to always keep your gun locked up. Don't make it accessible to anybody else, but don't make it accessible to yourself because you might do something bad with your gun. You don't ever want to have access to your own gun. That would not be responsible. Let me tell you something. I really hope there are a lot of people right here tonight who have really ready access to their firearms. One of my sayings when I used to teach the LTC class was the safest place for your gun is on you because that's where you have the most control over it and that's where you can use it to save your life if you need to. You don't have to go find it somewhere else. But if your gun is locked up and you don't have access to it, you can't get to it if you need to save your own life. Now, yes, there are plenty of times when it's appropriate to take a firearm and lock it up. Maybe you have young children in the house, you can't wear all of your guns on you because God bless you have too many of them, not too many, but too many to carry on you. And you're going to keep the others in a safe. That's good. That's great. That's your own personal decision that you make with your own property inside of your own home. And that's not the government's responsibility to mandate. But what the Texas legislature was trying to do was to push this bill to say, oh, if you're a responsible gun owner, you will keep your guns locked up and away from you. And the terrible, seriously wicked thing about that, evil thing about that, is trying to teach Texans that we shouldn't have the ability to defend ourselves, that our lives aren't that valuable. What they're trying to do with this, the mind control bills, is to train your neighbors that guns are always bad. Now, they're not going to change your mind, but if they can change enough of your neighbors' minds, enough of your family's mind, enough of your friends' minds, to make them start reporting on you and them start pressuring you and finding things about you that might be dangerous because, oh gosh, you have a gun, and we saw you with a gun, and you went to the range, and your kid talked about going to the range, oh my gosh, we have trouble here, right? If they can just make people think that that's a dangerous thing, they've got you. So guys, we have got to fight the mind control and gun control. That's going to be one of the biggest things this session, even if the House gains Republican seats, we are still absolutely going to have to fight that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to stand with me during the next legislative session in talking to representatives, and if we can get Representative Tinderholt back in office, you know he's going to stand with you, so it's absolutely worth the work to get him in office. Please absolutely join us. That is the most critical thing. Representative Tinderholt, Representative Kasich, we cannot let those seats go. It is vitally important that we stand up, but it's also vitally important we keep standing up all throughout session and showing up when it matters, whether it's in person or whether it's a remote request for public input. So I've got some new newsletters in the back, and I think Hannah and Lisa are going to pass some of those out to you. But that just tells you, that's our monthly newsletter for GOA Texas, and it tells you what we've been doing and what you can do to join the fight for gun rights here in Texas as we fight for constitutional carry, which is getting rid of that license to carry. It's getting rid of the requirement of the license to carry, as we fight for getting rid of gun-free zones, which are anything but, or getting rid of gun-limited zones, and fighting for your freedoms, advancing your gun freedoms, because we value life enough for you to be able to defend your own life and have that ability to do so freely. So we'll pass out those newsletters so you can see what we've been up to. But what I want to ask you to do right now is, if you care about gun rights and you say, you know, I'd like to do something, I don't have a lot of time or a lot of money, but I'd like to do something to help, grab your phone and shoot me a quick text. So if this is successful, I want to get like 100 texts tonight. That would make my night. So you guys make my night tonight. Grab your cell phone, grab a piece of paper. I'm going to give you a phone number. Make a note of this phone number, 512-937-3006. I'll say it again, 512-937-3006. Shoot me a text and just say, yeah, I want to help with gun rights. Give me your email address and your zip code and your name. That's your email address, your zip code, and your name, and I'll add you to my alert list so you get those alerts. Every 2 weeks, I send you an email newsletter, which is an update and action alerts. Some of the things happening right now that I talk about in that newsletter that I'm going to pass out. Number one, right now, the Mass Violence Committee has asked for your input on the topics of, what do you think about social media monitoring in order to help us catch those bad guys that are such a threat? What do you think about threat detection factors? What do you think about ways to keep guns out of the hands of felons? Like, I don't know, red flag laws, things like that. They want your opinion. Write out a paragraph or two and send it in. That's one thing you can do this week. Second thing you can do this week, and again, this is in the newsletter as well as on our website, you can show up this Saturday. How many of y'all are here in the general area? Like you're within an hour of Arlington or of Bedford? All right. How many of y'all care about gun rights, liberty? You wouldn't be here if you didn't. Of course you care. If you can, join me this Saturday, 10 a.m. in Bedford for a rally for Jeff Kaysen and a help to get out the vote. And then in the afternoon, an event for Tony Tinderholt to help get out the vote. And we're going to have tacos at the end. It's going to be a lot of fun, but we're going to work to get out that vote. So if you want to get an email with all the updated information, don't forget to shoot me that text. I'll give you all the info you need. Again, my phone number is 512-937-3006. Thank you guys so much. I'll stick around. I've got more things at the table. Oh, where's Fran? Hang on just a second. Where's Fran? I need Fran. There's Fran. Fran, happy birthday. I'm going to give Fran a shirt. Happy birthday. birthday, and thank you to Fran. And if you guys want a shirt or you want some other bling, I got stickers and things and stuff at the back of the table. Come see me there. But most importantly, stand up for gun rights. Stand up for Tony Tinderholt. He's the man who's going to come next, so I'm going to get out of the way. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Tony Tinderholt, he's a strong and fierce conservative. He's running for his fourth term as state rep for House District 94, which is Arlington, Pantego, Dalworthing Gardens, that area. But is he ever a friend to us? We're so grateful you're here tonight. He's going to share with us his goals and plans for the session. Come on up, Tony. Thank you so much.
How's everybody doing tonight? So how many people here love our great nation and the state of Texas? I thought I was going to have to say that twice, but I should have known better with this group of folks, right? So you'll get a little chuckle. I was sitting over here, we sent out another text message. How many people have seen the new commercial we just released with my lovely wife on it? Have you seen that commercial yet? Where we had death threats against our family? So what's interesting about the other side is how they respond to people like us. You should read some of the stuff that I was just reading, the text messages we get back. Some of them are pretty funny and comical. Some are downright vile and disgusting. And so that's what we're dealing with this time. We're dealing with people that want to do harm to our nation, harm to Texas, and harm to you so bad that they're willing to lie and cheat to do it. How many people here have seen the television ads and the mailers against me? So, anyone seen the TV ads? Yeah. Every single one of those ads has huge falsehoods in it. They try to mislead people. Let me tell you, they talk about us defunding education. I know everyone here knows that education is in the Constitution. It's required in the state of Texas. It's important. Teachers shape our communities and they shape our state, right? Super important to have quality education in Texas. Not only did I not defund education, we increased funding to education. It's just despicable. The other thing that my opponent wants to talk about is expanding Medicaid. How do you feel about that? You want to expand it?
No.
Well, you know, what they're trying to tell people is that, well, you know, we're paying taxes, so we should get our fair share back to the state of Texas. But what they fail to tell people, they don't tell anyone this, that after 3 years, that the estimated cost will be over $20 billion, over 10%, right at 10% of our state budget will go to that program after the first 3 years. How do you feel about spending another $20 billion in the state of Texas? How do you feel about that? Anyone like it?
No.
Well, that's how this race is going, and it's how every race in the state of Texas is going. So before I tell you about things that we plan on doing next session, I've heard different folks come up here and talk about needing help. I'll tell you what we need. We need people to stand at the polls with us. You can volunteer, or I'll give you $15 an hour to do it. All the way through early voting and election day. Chad, right there, my campaign manager. Stand up, turn around, smile. Everyone, Chad Shoemate. Chad would love to talk to you. We need people to stand at the polls with our shirt on and hand out push cards. Tell people to vote all the way down the ticket, right? Those races all the way down at the bottom of the ticket are just as important as the one at the top. How many of you think we could afford to lose our great sheriff in Tarrant County?
No.
Yeah, well, guess what? People like him and the judges that are down ballot have to worry pretty bad this time. We need to make sure that people vote all the way down the ballot. I'm hoping that you'll bring 2 or 3 of your family or friends and go vote. And vote every single Republican all the way down the ballot. All right, so for some of you that don't know me, I'm State Representative Tinderholt. I'm from Arlington, and I cover Arlington, Dalworthing Gardens, and Pantego. I've served for 6 years in the legislature, but I've served my entire adult life. I spent 10 years in the Air Force as a linguist, did counter-drug missions in South and Central America, fluent Spanish. I got out after 10 years. I joined at 17, and I wanted to see what was out there besides the military. 3 days after September 11th, I had a calling, and I rejoined the military as an Army officer, and I went and did some combat missions, combat tours. I have a Bronze Star medal, and I have a combat action badge. Again, 21 years in the military, I know what it takes to serve and sacrifice. I get it. I sacrifice every day, just like the people here that sacrifice from your families to be here, to knock on doors, to meet voters, and talk about things that some people think are not popular. So I commend you. Give yourselves a round of applause for what you're doing for the great state of Texas. I have a wonderful wife, Bethany, former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader, and I'm not quite sure how I swung that deal, but she's an amazing, wonderful woman, and it's because her mom and dad are great parents. And I'm proud to have her as the mother of my two youngest children, Tyler and Brennan. We went to the zoo today, and it was refreshing. We've been campaigning. I own a small business, and we've just been really busy. So today at the zoo, beautiful day. Probably one of the prettiest days I've had in a long time, and I got to spend it with my family at the zoo, and I thank God for that. I have a 29-year-old daughter, and my grandson turned 6 yesterday. I have a 6-year-old grandson. I know you're surprised. I'm only 22 years old, and I have a 6-year-old grandson. I get it. I get asked about that all the time. I'm not sure how that worked out. I actually turned 50 about a month and a half ago. Half a century. Holy cow. I've got a 25-year-old son. He just finished up his electrician journeyman time, hopefully this year, and they both live in Nebraska. My wife, if you've met her, is very supportive of what we do. And I say we because this is a family thing. We serve Texans. My family serves Texans. When I get death threats, my family gets them. DPS parks in front of our house, not my house. When I'm at the Capitol and people want to do harm to you, you have to make sure your family's protected. So we serve as a family, and I can't wait to serve Texas for another 2 years. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's necessary. Somebody has to go down to Austin and fight for what's right for Texans. Remember this. Inalienable rights. Those are God-given rights. The government doesn't grant those rights to you, and we don't take them away. We protect them. My job is to protect your God-given rights while I'm in Austin, and too many people forget it. How do you feel about protecting God-given rights? How do you feel about that? Well, let me tell you, the other side doesn't think that those are God-given rights, and they think they grant and they take it away. And every single day we're in Austin, we have to remember that and fight that. And that's what we're fighting right now. Let me tell you a little bit about my recent past. I know, or how many people here know that I actually had COVID? How many people knew that? So COVID's real. It's real. I'm A positive. They say A positive people get it really bad. My 2 and 4-year-old had it. My wife, my mother and father-in-law, and they had minor symptoms. They didn't feel really all that great, but it was very short-lived. Mine was 5 to 6 weeks. I almost died. I don't know how many people here knew that. It was that bad. So COVID is real, but let me tell you, the government should not be mandating what you do and don't do. We don't grant rights or take them away. We protect them, and therefore the government should not be dictating what you do in your private life. Now, let me be clear and follow that up and say that people should wear masks when they're out and about if they feel uncomfortable. People should protect their families when they feel like that's important. And when you feel like it's important to protect yourself and those around you, please wear a mask, right? I think that we are going to protect ourselves better than any elected official in this country. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
We live in America, we live in Texas, and we make these types of decisions for ourselves called personal responsibility. It's really easy, right? I get it. People think that they're doing what's right for you, but guess what? What's right for you may not be right for you. And when you live in a free country, you get to make certain decisions for yourself and your family. So I believe that you and I will take better care of ourselves than any government elected official. So I had COVID, and it sucked. Sadly for my opponent, I made it through, and she's going to lose. She's going to lose this election coming up. So my opponent is the president of the NAACP in Arlington, wants on-demand abortion up till birth, wants to defund the police. How do you guys feel about defunding the police in Texas? Yeah, well, guess what? 76% of Arlington and Darlington Gardens and Pentigo do not want to defund the police either, and I'm 100%. I support police. I support law and order. I support what's right for America and right for Texas. My opponent and all the opponents out there against Republicans don't. And it's disappointing. All right. So let's talk a little bit about last session, and then I'll move on to the next one. And I know I'm going to run out of a little bit of time because I got to stop at 55, right? About 55?
You got 20 minutes.
Okay, so I have an hour and 20 minutes left, they said. So, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So how many of you guys heard about the drone bill that I killed last year? How many of you guys heard about that? All right. For those of you that didn't hear about it, I'm going to tell you about it. Then you're going to want to go watch online and watch the video. So a large company called DJI, Chinese company, they decide that it's a good idea for China to subsidize DJI and sell drones to America that are worth $4,000 to $5,000 a piece. But guess how much they buy them for in America? Try $900. Why do you think they do that? Why do you think they do that? They want to spy on America. That's why. They're our adversary. Let's be very clear. China would like to end America. Do you believe that?
Yes.
So this drone bill was innocuous at the beginning, and people didn't think much about it. But when you do a little bit of digging, DJI had lobbyists at the committee meeting and in the gallery watching this bill. This bill was stated to be an Amazon bill, so they could take pictures of your front porch. Look, I get it. Technology's changing, the world's changing. I want to take a picture and make sure something gets dropped off on your front porch. I get that. But not at the expense of your privacy. All day long, not at the expense of your privacy. So, as we started looking at the bill, we found out what the Department of Defense found out. That DJI was indeed spying on America, and when DJI was asked, do you give the data that's stored in the cloud from these? What do you think they said? They said yes. So think about this. The U.S. Army can't use those anymore, but in Texas, they were going to have the Texas Military Department. I'm on that committee, Defense and Veterans Affairs. We oversee the largest National Guard and Air National Guard in the country. Think about them using DJI drones flying over military bases with F-35s, counting aircraft. Think about them being able to map out military bases, key infrastructure, power grids, water, you name it, they had access to it. I'm proud to say that it took us about 15 minutes at the back mic and front mic to kill that bill in one fell swoop, and it died. After 21 years of spending that, after 21 years of being on foreign soil, seeing combat, watching America's sons and daughters sacrifice the most, sacrifice everything for America, killing that bill was the right thing to do for you, for them, and for America. And that's the types of things I will do in Austin. That's the types of things we will continue to do. Real briefly, does anyone remember the veteran bill that I killed? They wanted to make it so that anyone that served in the state guard would have the title of veteran. I'll be very brief about it, but I want to tell you the types of things we do. What does that mean? That means that the Texas State Guard doesn't carry weapons. They do amazing missions. They do humanitarian things. They pack sandbags. They deliver food. They rescue people during hurricanes and floods. Absolutely amazing organization. But they don't carry weapons. They don't deploy on foreign land, and they don't have to risk their lives in combat. And so I took real issue with that bill, trying to give them veteran status. They would all of a sudden get all of the things that veterans had. The same thing happened. Told the author I was going to kill the bill. He argued with me for about 2 weeks, pulled the bill, put it back up, pulled it, put it back up. Eventually, he had the wherewithal to bring it to the floor. We spent about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, talking on the back mic, talking on the front mic. Bill died about 1:13, I think, to 12. That's what I am elected to do for you in Texas, and I will continue to do it. So some of the things that we see coming up this next session. COVID was devastating to our great state and our nation. Absolutely devastating. We are the 8th largest economy in the world. Did you guys know that? Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world. Think about that. Larger than Mexico, larger than Canada, right? We teeter back and forth with Russia between 8th and 9th. Right now, 8th largest economy in the world. That's huge, right? Huge, the money that moves through Texas. 80% of those businesses are small businesses in Texas. How many of you guys have a small business? I do too. I own a small business. And COVID hurt. COVID hurt a lot of people. And so one of the things that's going to happen this next session is budget day and budget shortfalls. What I pledge to you is that I'm not going to add additional taxes. We're not going to add additional revenue to stuff. I want to try to find places to cut non-essential government programs to fund the essential ones like transportation, education, right? Public safety. And when I talk about public safety, this session is going to be an interesting session. Not only are we going to have all these budget shortfalls, and you're going to have people stand up for what's right so that you don't get taxed out of your home and you don't get taxed like crazy when you go spend money in the state of Texas. What's going to happen this session is they're going to try to find new money and new ways. We're going to stop that. But another thing is going to happen this session. The left wants to defund police. They want to defund police. And they want to come up with other social programs with that money. Well, be ready, left, because there's a bunch of us coming to Austin that are ready to take city charters away from places like Austin and make their city council and their mayors understand that city charters require public safety. And for those cities that don't want to protect their citizens, as a state legislator, I will do everything I have to make sure they do get protected. And I'm doing everything that I can to revoke their city charter and force those folks to be protected across the state of Texas. It's imperative. I think we should do a lot more like what Florida's doing. Florida's doing some great things when it comes to public safety. And another thing they're doing that's great, that I intend to try to do down in Austin, is to make sure that the people that are rioting and destroying businesses and property and harming other human beings, that they're brought to justice. And that district attorneys that are liberal across the state shall prosecute, not may prosecute. It's disgusting to watch what's happening across America. But not in this great state, not in Texas. I'm going to bounce back and forth, talk about my opponent. As I talk about other states, what's interesting is that California and New Yorkers have donated more to my opponent than Texans. Over 80% of her donations come from out of state. So Californians and New Yorkers want my opponent to be the state rep in Arlington more than Texans. Sadly, guess what? It's happening across the state. Across the state. Many, many mailers from GunSense, many mailers from large Bloomberg organizations. None of them have her name on them, right? They're all in-kind donations. They're not even doing the research to find out what's important to Texas voters. A lot of the data is not accurate. It's wrong. But a lot of this money flooding into the state is trying to flip the election. And everything that we're talking about wanting to do next session, the only way we can do it is if Republicans are in office. So I'm asking you over and over, bring 3 of your friends and your neighbors and your family to go vote. Vote all the way down the ballot, right? All the way down to the very bottom. It's super, super important. How many of you heard about redistricting? That's happening every 10 years. It's happening this time. Anyone know who the vice chair of redistricting of the Texas House is? The Democrat caucus chair is the vice chair. So, something we'll talk about in a moment is going to be the speaker's race. But picture a Democrat majority in the Texas House. Picture it. Not for very long because it's not going to happen. But picture it. And then picture the speaker being a Democrat. And then think for a moment, of the Democrat caucus chair being the chair of redistricting for the state of Texas. Now, what's that mean? That means that for the next 10 years, gerrymandering happens, and it means that House races, Senate races, congressional and Senate races, everything across the board changes in a negative way. And when I say negative, I mean unethical. Now, they will try to tell you at the redistricting meetings that we have around the state that Republicans are doing things differently and that they're doing it wrong. That's totally false. Imagine that, right? Republicans try really hard to make sure that those districts are drawn ethically and morally. How do you think those districts would be drawn if Democrats were in charge? Think about it. Do you think they'd be drawn ethically and morally correct? No. And we'd lose Texas. And so that's one thing that we're going to have to fight really hard this session is redistricting. Now, the census looks like it's going to be a little late. So I don't know if there's going to be a special session or not. Probably, possibly, we could end up having a special session. But I'm prepared for that. And I'm ready to go down to Austin and do whatever it takes to make sure that redistricting happens and that we do it ethically and morally. What else do you guys want to hear about? Give me a topic. Anything. Yep.
Are activists be allowed in the Capitol?
So I took that. I'm glad you asked. Anyone see the results of the poll that went out to legislators? Did you guys see that? Well, if you look at it, you could probably guess which one was mine if you looked at 150 of them. I'm just guessing. You probably know mine and about a handful of others. Because I believe that I need to go down to Austin and do your work. My job is to go to Austin and do your work. But I don't want to do your work without allowing you your God-given right, your inalienable right, to come to the Capitol and lobby. I think you should be able to come and go in my office because my office is essentially your office. I work for you. You elect me to go do your work. You should be able to come to my office. I also believe that you should be able to go to the committee hearings and have your say and have your input. I also believe that you should be able to come into the Capitol and go to the gallery and watch. And if you so choose, because you're free, that you want to watch it on TV at stay at home, that's okay too. But I'm going to fight pretty hard to make sure that this session has the least amount of impediment for people to be able to come. I want you guys to be able to come to the Capitol and lobby and discuss and talk and be a part of the process. Yes, ma'am.
What can we do to help see that happens? Who are the key people we should be contacting?
So first, I would tell you to contact your current legislator. I would also tell you that House Admin is very involved with that. House Administration. House Administration would be State Representative Charlie Guerin. He's out of Fort Worth. I would tell you to contact your state rep and your senator. It's really important. Other questions?
Are you guys going to do anything to
We're going to do something, and it's going to be good.
prevent Abbott from
Okay. So emergency powers for the governor, yes. So I know that you guys just recently went to Austin, right? Saw it on social media. Regardless of who the governor is, regardless of who it is, we need to rein in emergency powers of any governor and future governor. And look, I know people are going to watch this online. There's going to be people all the way across the spectrum that are where you are, and some are a little bit less and think that certain things should have been done. Bottom line is this. There's a point when those powers need to be reined in, where people like me and 149 other members and 31 on the Senate side should be called to Austin to make decisions on behalf of the people that elected us. I believe that 100%. And I don't know if you saw that I fought for that many times. This session, there's already bills that probably I think are in draft. We're going to draft some as well. I think we had about 12 of them when I went down to Austin 2 weeks ago. We will rein those in, and that will change. And that's for any governor. That's for if the power struggle happens and changes, regardless of who it is. You have representation from a senator and from a House rep, and we go down there, and there's 3 pieces and parts to the government, and right now that's not happening. And so, not only that, I mean, think about this. If we went down there and made decisions, it would take a lot of heat off of one individual. It really would have. And so, I'm going to fight and continue to fight for that. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My aunt pays $6,000 a year to live in a wood-sided house. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on appraisal district reform.
Yeah, so we did try to do some stuff last session. We're going to do it again this session. So, there needs a lot needs to happen with the appraisal review boards, but also at the appraisal district and who appoints and how those boards consist. And the fact that they shouldn't be, now we all know some of those guys are talking to folks that tax you, right? There's about, I think we had 8 or 9 different amendments that we tried to tack on that bill last year, and every single one of them died. So we're going to change our strategy this time. Our job is to protect you and mitigate the amount of money that you spend. Anyone ever hear of de minimis? You guys ever hear that? No. I want to talk about that for a minute. How much time I got?
4 minutes.
4 minutes? I thought it was an hour and 4 minutes. I'm going to talk about de minimis real quick. I'm kidding. De minimis, I know you say 5, but Julie says 4. And in my house, my wife's in charge. So. De minimis. You know that last year when we did that tax bill, I had an amendment to do de minimis. What de minimis means is if a taxing entity wants to tax you, let's do it this way. If they're going to increase taxes by less than $500,000, that they didn't need to bring it to the voters. Are you with me? So think of Dalworthington Gardens and Pantego, who both run operating budgets of about $1 million a year. If they were to increase their taxes by $499,999.99, they would have increased their budget by 50%. Right? So with my amendment, it would have done away with 90%, the other 90% of the taxing entities being able to do that. But with de minimis in the bill, it stayed. Well, you can sure as heck bet that the very first bill that I'm authoring is a de minimis bill. I'm going to make sure that taxing entities can't increase by 50%. Are you kidding me? 50%. Think about that. Now, will it happen? I don't think Dalworthington Gardens or Pantego are going to increase their budgets by 50%. I don't see it happening. But should they even be able to before they go to a vote? Right? They shouldn't be able to do that. By 50%. People set up residents, their families grow in that community, and if it ever happened anywhere in the state, I'm sure there's places in the state that would love to do that. My job is to stand between you and government and protect you, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. That's what I've done for 6 years, and that's what I'm going to continue to do because my family supports me doing it. It's the right thing to do. I've served my entire adult life, and I'm honored to do it. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys very much. I listen to you, not him.
Smart man. Okay, I think all 4 of our speakers are still here. If you would like to introduce yourselves or ask some questions or anything like that. But as we leave, if you will please make sure there's no trash on the ground, no trash on your table. If you have push cards or flyers or whatever from our